What's up, everybody? Brett here, and I'm back with my YouTube channel, Good Talk Gaming. I'm here doing some unit testing today, kind of for the first time on video, and I'm joined by my friend, you know him as Triiari. I feature kind of a lot of his battles on my YouTube channel. He's a friend. We're in Discord right now. You won't be able to hear him, but we're going to be talking to each other, and we're going to be kind of carefully choosing our matchups so that we can test out some of the new units in the Lizardmen roster. Now, Triiari is someone that likes to play High Elves. He knows the matchups very well for a lot of the different races. So we're kind of bouncing ideas off of each other and kind of using his knowledge to help myself better understand what type of matchups we can expect to be good or bad, either in favor of the Lizardmen or the High Elves. So with all that out of the way, we thought we would start by testing out some infantry. The first thing is going to be the new and very cool red-crested skinks. So we're going to throw them up against the spearmen. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm just going to send my red-crested skinks straight at the spearmen. There we go. He's going to charge them at my red-crested skinks. And so the thing about the skinks is they have poison, something that was kind of a late addition. We didn't see that in the Ever-Chosen tournament. They didn't have it then, but they have it now. And poison's a big deal. It's a pretty strong debuff. Reduces armor-piercing missile damage. Not going to be relevant here. Speed, but weapon damage, armor-piercing damage are going to be the most relevant for the debuff. They also have immune to psychology thanks to Frenzy, which as long as their leadership is good, which it currently is, they'll get more weapon damage and probably most importantly the melee attack. And on the charge here, plus 8% charge. So let's see how they do. I had a battle recently where I took red-crested skinks up against dwarf warriors and they demolished them. So it's going to take a second. It's going to be a bit of a grind. And at certain points, maybe if Triiari would like, we can fast forward. But I'm all about kind of watching the cinematics of the fight and watching these little guys tear into them. So Triiari, I know people can't hear you, but what are your predictions here? I think the red-crested skinks are going to win. But how much do you think the spearmen are going to make it out alive with? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Triiari's making a good point right now, which is something that I hadn't quite considered before we started. But he's making the point that the spearmen are meant to hold, right? They're not exactly meant to kill units like red-crested skinks, but they will hold for a long time. They have great leadership. But the thing about the High Elves is that they start the battle with their racial passive, which is, we can zoom in here, it's martial prowess. So that gives them 12 melee defense and 2 melee attack. As long as their leadership stands strong, as long as they have hit points above 50%. So they're holding great right now, but once we get them below that 50% mark, we'll see their stats drop. And I think at that point the red-crested skinks are just gonna win. And we should point out that their red-crested skinks are 75 gold more expensive than the spearmen. So it's a relatively even costed matchup. So I think here, yeah, we can fast forward. That's cool. And let's watch what happens now. They've dropped below 50%. They've lost that martial prowess. They lost that kind of huge melee defense that helps them stand and fight against red-crested skinks. And this is, honestly, it's taking longer than I thought it would to beat them down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of that comes down, so what he's saying is they're better than your average spearman. And I think that comes down a lot to their leadership. In the same way that the Eternal Guard for the Wood Elves seems sometimes to hold forever, the High Elf spearmen are just great. And of course, this isn't a great matchup for them. You know, they're fighting units that are almost designed to kill them, and they're still lasting this long. I'm surprised. You know what? Let's put it back on normal speed, and I'm gonna pull my skinks back. Let's pull them back. If you want to pull your spearmen back, we don't need to watch them go down to like annihilation. We can just pull them back. I don't want the balance bar to be too heavily affected by our testing. I think this gives us a great idea of how strong. Honestly, I'm shocked by the spearmen. They did great, but I still have 84 models on my red-crested skinks, and we're playing on ultra right now. And yeah, let's go ahead. I'm gonna send forward my red-crested skinks against your standard white lions, and we'll see how they do. This is probably a much more fair test in the way that white lions are designed to kill armored units, and they're more of a DPS unit than the spearman is. And as long as they have that martial prowess active, I think they're going to do a ton of damage here, honestly. Now, another thing to consider too, white lions cost a lot more. Are they 800? Is that what they are? I think so. 850, something in that ballpark. So they're a much more expensive unit, and one of the things to consider that they have that something like the red-crested skinks don't have is missile resistance. So they have great missile resistance, but at the end of the day, they're both armor-piercing, kind of great weapon fighters. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so what Triiari is saying also, he's like, there's multiple factors to consider here. On the charge, the red-crested skinks did great. They were holding their own versus the white lions. But the thing about white lions is, you don't want to leave them unsupported. You know, they're not a perfect frontline unit. They're meant to be supported by spearmen. You send in the spearmen, or you brace your spearmen, and let them take the charge or meet the charge, and then you follow up with your white lions, and your white lions then will be the damage dealers. They won't have taken that huge burst damage of whatever's charging you that the spearmen take, and then you'll have a full health, martial prowess, still active white lions unit that can grind out for you for the rest of the battle. And their leadership is excellent. You'll see here the red-crested skinks are dipping. That's right. They hit hard. Let's pull back our units once again. Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's a good point. Let's send forward. I've got now the cohort, and we're going to be fighting the Pyramane Company. Now, the cohort are actually almost the exact same cost as a standard White Lions unit, and I think if they were fighting a standard White Lions unit, they would probably win. They have their special ability, in addition to being purely unbreakable, which is extremely powerful. I'm going to use this Refuse to Die ability a moment after we engage on the charge. So that's when the most damage is being done. You'll see here, boom, they start taking a lot of damage, and right as the first couple models start to fall, I'm going to pop the Refuse to Die, and that's going to keep them alive. You'll see here, no more unit models are dying. We're still at 109. That's going to keep them at kind of peak combat effectiveness. But the Pyramane Company are not pushovers. They are a regiment of renown. They sunder armor. My skinks are at 0 armor right now, and I think they're going to have a hard time against the Pyramane Company. They're just such a beastly unit. The fact that the skinks are unbreakable will probably help them. I mean, it's going to be close. So what I'm thinking is going to happen here, still have 30 seconds left on Refuse to Die before I can use it again. I may, in a battle like this, I may be able to get 2 uses of it off. And I can guarantee you that in that opening salvo where I had it popped, and it lasts for 20 seconds, I probably didn't lose about 10 or so skinks in that 20 seconds. So, I mean, it's a powerful ability, that is for sure. So here we go, I'm going to pop it one more time. We're still up to 41 skinks. Oh, wow, and the white lions are still at 57. So this is really not even that close. The white lions, the Pyramane Company, are beastly. I think though that the cohort I think would have beaten the standard white lions for sure. But they didn't have a chance versus the Pure Main Company. Did you expect that, Triiari? They're 875. He's asking what the cost is. Mm-hmm. Sure. Right. So he's basically making the point that you should. It's basically a cost effectiveness thing. You want to use the right tools for the right job, and using the Pure Main to take on the cohort of Sotek is not really a good trade in favor of the High Elves. Even though he won there, he used a vastly superior unit to take it out, and he took a lot of damage in the process. So now we're going to head into a fight with the Temple Guard versus the Phoenix Guard, and this is a funny one because they both. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was gonna suggest that. So what Triiari is saying is that he's gonna stop. Right now I believe he's gonna line up. The Temple Guard do not have charge defense against all, but the Phoenix Guard do. So charge defense against all units basically should never charge. Charge bonus of 10 is not going to help them in this battle, but completely negating the charge bonus of my Temple Guard absolutely will. So there are very few units in the game that have charge defense against all, but I think it's correct in unit testing to do exactly what Triiari is suggesting. And let's slow-mo it a little bit so we can get some cool shots. But I think it's absolutely correct to make sure that you're using the unit to its fullest potential in unit testing. And if you're a High Elf player and you're using your Phoenix Guard to charge down the center of the battlefield, to take on, Chaos chosen great weapons, it's like you're using them wrong. They need to stand still and receive charges, and in that way they're going to be the most effective. They have less weapon strength. That's the Phoenix Guard, that is. Sure. They also cause fear, which is not irrelevant, and they also have physical resistance. So, something that a lot of people don't know about um, halberd units in this game is kind of how they function attack-wise. So, unlike standard infantry units that can only attack, the units standing in the very first row of combat are the only ones that can attack. Halberd units, I believe the second row can also attack, so their DPS can sometimes be a bit ineffective. So the same way in like real life, I suppose I've never been in a real life phalanx, but in a real life combat scenario, if you've got a bunch of guys with long pointy sticks fighting each other, the guys in the back are going to be able to pick their sticks up over their heads and jam some in too. So it's very kind of realistic in that way, and it augments the DPS for the Temple Guards, for the Phoenix Guard, and to kind of compensate for that, they've made it so that halberd units attack slower, but more unit models are attacking like per second. Yeah. So the Phoenix Guard, they appear to be wrapping this up. They're kind of almost getting like a bit of a concave going. On one side, the Temple Guard are wrapped up around the edge, and on the other side, the Phoenix Guard have wrapped around the edge, and they're just kind of chewing them up. These are two really high leadership units, but I think it's pretty clear that the Phoenix Guard are the superior unit. The Temple Guard cost 1,000. You want to pull your Phoenix Guard back, and I'm going to pull my Temple Guard back. I'm very curious. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Triiari is making the point that something that I wanted to say, probably the most important thing here. Once again, he's going to stop his Keepers of the Flame. I believe they also still have charge defense against all. It doesn't say that on their tooltip, but I imagine that it's there. I see it there at the bottom. Okay. The Keepers of the Flame rely heavily on their physical resistance. They have 30% physical resistance. That's huge That basically lets them beat almost anything in the game. But these Star Chamber Guardians have magic damage, which bypasses that. So I'm expecting them to do a lot more damage than we might otherwise see. Hmm. Absolutely. So something to consider from the Phoenix Guard that Triiari is pointing out is that these being the Regiment of Renown, they also have the Mark of Assyrian. So you'll see there the first one kind of dies, or one of the first Phoenix Guard dies, and he explodes into flame, and that's going to deal damage to my Star Chamber Guardians. They also, this is very important, they have Martial Mastery instead of Martial Prowess. So instead of that 2 melee attack, 8 melee defense, they now have 8 plus melee attack and plus 12 melee defense. Absolutely. So they're so much stronger than, like, let's say the spearmen and the white lions. That bonus is so huge, and because they're already such an incredibly tanky unit in the first place, getting them below 50% HP is very difficult. So you can expect them to have that bonus for most of this battle. And you see here we're going fast motion, and they're still fighting. It's kind of crazy. 66 models left on the Star Chamber Guardians, and the Keepers of the Flame sitting at 75. How expensive are the Keepers of the Flame again? Can you remind me? 1600, something like 1600, and I think that's pretty accurate. And the Star Chamber Guardians are 1500. Now, of course, guys, the Star Chamber Guardians also have Guardian, which is part of their, part of their strength. So this is a straight one-on-one combat scenario, and I think it's fair to say that the Keepers of the Flame are winning this. So let's pull them back, and I'm going to bring my Star Chamber Guardians to my Lords over here so we can test some of the missile troops and that whole deal that we have lined up. So in a 1v1 fight, I think it's fair to say that the Keepers come out ahead, but the Star Chamber Guardians really give it back to them, which almost no other unit in the game can say. I think the Keepers of the Flame they're certainly in the top 3 strongest infantry units, period. Sure. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to do some other testing. I think we should test perhaps some of the other units first before we get to the Lords. I was thinking of testing, so guys, what I have here is the Colossodon Hunters, the Ripperdactyl Riders, the new Regiment of Renown for the Ripperdactyls. So let's go back to standard speed. It's a little bit easier on my computer. And, okay, so there's some things to go over here. The Ripperdactyls are an anti-infantry unit. They're not meant, to fight things like a Star Dragon, but I have my theories that these Colossodon Hunters here, they're 1500 gold, extremely expensive. I think they're going to be able to take this Star Dragon. Now, I'm going to say, Triiari, I think you should try, when I say go, I want you to try and get a breath attack off on the Ripperdactyls, because I feel like that's fair. It's part of their kit. We can get, maybe one breath attack off, perhaps kill a model before the Ripperdactyls are able to engage, and I think that's a fair fight. But just do that when I say go, and I'm going to, because I think honestly it may miss, and I think that's something you should expect when you're dealing with Dragon Breaths. But the big deal about the Colossodon Hunters, they're 1500 gold first off. They have Vanguard deployment, which is huge. That's part of their kit, so you can sneak up behind people. But these versions are anti-large as opposed to the anti-infantry standard variant. They have Frenzy, they cause fear, and Frenzy gives them those same bonuses we talked about earlier. But they also have a unique ability called Toad Rage, which is an insane fun name. But it's a 60-second cooldown. It has an 18-second duration. It causes them to rampage, so I'm going to lose control. But the bonuses it gives, I think, is going to let me destroy this Star Dragon. Plus 40% armor piercing damage, plus 40% weapon damage. They already have 134 weapon strength, with 36 of that being standard, 98 of that being armor piercing, and then a bonus versus large of 10. Okay. With all that said, I think we're ready to test the Star Dragon, probably the strongest standalone monstrous unit in the game, I believe. Not Regiment of Renown. I think if you count maybe the Sphinx of Uksef. Sure. So Alright, I'm going to charge in. You use a breath attack. Ready, go. Let's see how this works. The breath attack may land, it may miss. Hopefully he gets it off before they get on him. Okay, it was a bit of a whiff. He did some HP damage, and then boom. I'm going to pop the Toad Rage, and that's going to give me that buff. It did some damage. Okay, now we can watch the Star Dragon is getting torn up, but so are the Colossadon Hunters. They're rampaged, however. They're not going to lose this target. And the Star Dragon is taking a lot of damage, but the Ripperdactyls haven't lost a unit model yet. So they haven't lost any of their combat effectiveness, and they seem to have almost a bit of a surround going on the Star Dragon. The first model falls. It's to be expected. The Star Dragon has 580 weapon strength. Let's just see how much further we can go. Looks like the Ripperdactyls are going to win. So, and I think, you know, both of these races, the Lizardmen and the Star Dragon, have support that they can use. Something Triiari is pointing out. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out back my Ripperdactyls. High Elves are known for their healing. And the Lizardmen can also use Revivification Crystals and High Magic. Okay, guys. So this is going to be part 1 of the recording. When we come back, we're going to test the rest of the units here. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks for Triiari for joining me. And yeah, stay tuned for part 2. Later, guys.